Welcome back to Faith Together. I'm Lindsey, and we are so grateful to have you joining us today. Faith Together podcast is sponsored by the Center for Faith and Family at Olivet Nazarene University. And I'm joined today with my co-host, Leon. Hi, Leon.
Hi, Lindsey. It is always so good to see you.
It's good to see you too, and it's great to be back together for a part 2 episode of last week's.
That's right. We started a couple weeks ago our Page to Practice a series, and we had a great guest with us who we get to talk to again today.
Yeah, there was so much to talk about.
Oh my goodness, so much.
Yes.
And so the whole purpose of this particular series is to get authors who have written Christian education or Christian books, ministry books, in particular on family, and kind of let them share some things from those books that would be really practical in helping us as parents raise our kids to be lovers of Jesus.
That's right. So today we welcome back our guest, Dr. Rich Griffith, who, if you didn't join us last week, is the author of Voices, Helping Our Children and Youth Listen to Wise Counsel. Welcome back, Rich.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be back. You guys are so awesome.
The feeling is mutual. We're so glad to have you back. And I know, listeners, if you didn't get a chance to listen to last week's episode, please go back, listen to that one, because it has got some great takeaways for parents and for the voices that our kids listen to. But today, we want to just kind of take a turn and talk a little bit more, Rich, about one of the topics we ended with on our episode last week. How can parents help their child find and use their own voice, find that God-given identity and use their own voice?
Yeah, thank you that's a great question. I think, again, we have to be aware of the other voices that are speaking into our kids' lives and how those voices compete with our values. And, we have to be, again, that big, quiet voice that's just a steady guide in the lives of our young people, and consistency. Every child needs consistency. They need consistency. Like, for instance, I don't think I told you this, but my kids, I did say they're adopted, but one of the things we did for consistency for our kids, for my kids, is we have dinner every day just about at 5:30. We put the phones up, we cook meals together. And the reason I say that is because that is a consistent practice we have in our home. And so just like practices, we need to have consistent voices in our kids' lives. The reason that is important is because it brings that stability. And in a world of confusing voices, when we are connecting through time, transparency, and trust with our young people, with our children, then what they do is they start to develop a confidence in their own voice that they have gained from their parents. So, Leon, I know as an educator, and you're very familiar with Fowler's faith development and how he talks about, there's sort of this conventional faith development that children have where, and I guess, would you like to speak to that, or you want me to describe it a little bit? I do too much talking. I love to hear
No, go ahead. We want to hear from you. But yes, that conventional stages of faith is really, really important.
Yeah, and so the way I describe convention, and you guys will laugh maybe when you hear this, but so you have I'm not going to get political. I'm using an example. You have the Republican National Convention, and then you have the Democratic National Convention. Well, they're obviously pretty much apart in their approaches to life and things like that. But when you bring them together, Democrats think like Democrats, Republicans think like Republicans, right? So when kids get a conventional, this is just a way to tie it together, conventional faith development, they are hopefully parroting back the beliefs and being grounded in the sort of the discipleship foundational things that the parents have taught them, right?
Yeah.
And this is, again, based off Deuteronomy 6, as you go. And I love that because it's not just gaining it from the parents, it's gaining it from parents and community, right? So Deuteronomy 6 says, as you go, as you lay down and as you get up, right? Well, that implies in the home. And then it says, write these commands on the doorpost and and the gates, right? Why? Because when kids are walking in community like-minded, they see the same values that the parents have. Now, to say all this, before a child can learn to have integrative faith, and that is a faith that is their own, they have to have a foundation of conventional faith, of what do we believe? And our parents and our grandparents and all those positive 5 voices I talk about in the book need to be those voices that actually, through time, transparency, and trust, send a consistent message of these are the non-negotiables of our faith. This is what it means to live life in Jesus. And we have to model that, because what that does is it counters all the negative voices that try and detract from healthy discipleship. And so when the kids have a conventional foundation, they can move into the world with more confidence because of the stability offered. And then they learn to integrate their own faith. And their teenage rebellion comes a little bit less when they've had those good foundations in their life. And through that, they then are encouraged to find their own voice and speak up for what they believe. So we all have heard about students who have gone to a secular college, and all of a sudden their faith is kind of like blown out of the water and they walk away from Christ. Mm-hmm. Well, I really have to, and I don't mean to guilt parents. This is still things I'm learning, right? But, well, again, our kids are going to be discipled to something. Is our foundational message, have we been discipled strong enough to be able to disciple our children so that when they do become young adults and go out into the world, that they know what are the non-negotiables of the faith? Yeah,
that is so good. And it reminds me, Rich, this idea of these teenagers walking away from their faith. When I hear people say that, and when I talk about this in my classes, I often say, I don't think they're walking away from their faith. I think they're walking away from a faith that has not become theirs yet, that they kind of just tagged onto their parents and hadn't owned it for themselves. And I think that transition is so important. Mm-hmm. And it only happens when the foundation has been built, when kids can look at their parents and see consistency in the way that they live their lives, that what they say at home and the way that they live and the way that they do things at church are consistent. Then they begin to recognize, as you said on our last week's podcast, who God is. They get an identity of God because of how they see an adult figure through their parents. And so, it's always sad to me that one of the things I think that we neglect both in our families and maybe even in some of our youth ministries, and you're the youth ministry specialist, so you can speak to this, is that we don't challenge consistently enough. We don't challenge our children and youth to begin to own the faith and make it theirs personally in response to what they've seen from their parents and those other voices that are speaking into their lives, those positive voices. And so I think one of the things that I'm very passionate about, particularly as a children's pastor, is not just teaching the kids the Bible and teaching them about God. I want them to encounter God. I want God to become real to them in a life-changing way. And I think as adults, we often take the approach that, well, when they become teenagers, when they become adults, they can have this real kind of faith. And for now, as children, it's kind of this childish kind of faith. And I'm totally against that way of thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating. I always think about how many times do we look at the children's message on Ephesians 6 and they bring in the little plastic shield and the little plastic sword, and the little plastic helmet, right? Yeah, and that's kind of that's their memory. I would love for a children's minister person to bring in a real sword, not sharpened, of course, but like a real sword, a real helmet, a real shield, and say, "This is what you're growing into." Yeah. Right? And make it real, because it's heavy. It is good. It's solid. I regress. I don't know if y'all are familiar with what's called TBRI. It comes out of the Karen Purvis Institute for Child Development, Texas Christian University.
Yes, I'm very familiar. It's the life we're living right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Lindsey, again, another point to contact later. But,
yes.
There's a great book called The Connected Child. And I think this goes into our discipleship. I'm going to say something really quick. There is a reason we are called evangelicals and not discipogelicals. I want to make that term up. But we've been so focused on bringing children and youth to Christ at the altar, but we leave them there as spiritual orphans.
Yes.
We don't take them deep enough. Leon, it's everything you're saying. We don't take them deep enough in their faith. Now, here's how I think TBRI ties into that. Number one, there's this concept of empower, connect, and then correct. How many times as parents in our voice, we spend more time correcting than we do empowering and connecting with our children? Mm-hmm. Like our first mode is correcting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's this process we need to go through of, again, Christian nurture. How do I empower my child to start making age-appropriate decisions, right? How do I connect them? And there's another book I have coming that's already out. It's called Discipleship is Leadership. And it talks about Erickson's psychosocial development with a leadership model for discipleship. I don't want to plug that, but I want to go back to this concept that I think the reason we're not called disciple-evangelicals is because, frankly, and this is going to sound horrible, but I'm not sure how good of a job our churches are doing of discipling our parents so that they can disciple their children.
Right. And, what you've just said is kind of the heartbeat of the Center for Faith and Family that is sponsoring this podcast. We want to help equip parents to be everything that they can be so that when they go to Deuteronomy 6 and they begin looking at that, they can say, okay, I am where I need to be in my walk with God so I can pass on my faith to my children. And that kind of leads me really into the next question that I want to ask you. And that is, as we're trying to be faith-formed families and pass our faith to our kids, we talk a lot about on our podcast and in some of our curriculum about the importance of informal teaching, which the Shema talks about as you go, as you're on the road. I like to use the phrase "as we live life," as just life's happening. So the times that we're in the car, when we're walking the dog, when we're playing at the park, and all those kind of things. So share with us some ways that parents can disciple kids as they go from the kind of the experiences that you've had and the things you've been contemplating as you are writing about this.
And I would tag on there as well, just based on what you shared just a minute ago, Rich, about the TBRI, empower, connect, correct. I think those practices are great for children from trauma, for adoptive families. But now that I'm in the midst of it in our own family, I think they're great for all families. And I think sometimes we get, as we go discipleship, we think of it as building strong attachment together as families, which that is a part of it. But many times I think parents can leave out the correction because they want to just focus so much on the attachment side of connecting and discipling that we forget that correction. So maybe just even sharing a little bit more of what your work has led you to see is important to not only just have those conversations that are meaningful, but also how we bring in the correction piece too, because I think sometimes as parents, we can feel inept and scared to bring correction to our kids.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in that.
We just dumped the whole big load on you. So
it's a lot.
It's good. It's great. So we'll work our way through it. So I go back to the encounter of Adam and Eve in the garden, right? And obviously God was connected with them. But fascinating enough, it's fascinating that even though Adam's in a working relationship with God before the fall, God says in the Trinity, it's not good for man to be alone, right? And so this connecting that way and having a relationship with people we can connect with. And then I always tell parents this too. We never feel adequate. How many times do we ask questions like, what if I'd have done such and such different, right? But I want to remind our parents something. Adam and Eve had God, the perfect father, and they still blew it, right? They had their own choices to make. And then God still connects with them. He has empowered them. He connected with them in relationship. And even in the correction, he connects with them and he has a conversation. I find it's interesting. They play the blame game, right? Adam blames Eve and Eve blames the serpent. And worse, Adam blames God too, the woman you gave me, right? But he still corrects them. And it's a process of having natural consequences. Here's what I mean by this. How was Adam formed? Out of the dust, right? God handled creation project. How is God, what happens as a consequence? Well, toiling the soil becomes very difficult for Adam at this point. How is Eve created? Right? From the rib of Adam. So what becomes difficult? Childbirth, flesh from flesh. But the greatest consequence, really, and it was a merciful one, so that they learn, is God removes them from the garden. And we forget to ask why. Why does God remove them from the garden? Well, because the tree of eternal life was still in there. Yeah. And had he not had consequences and removed them, they would have eaten from that tree of eternal life and been eternally separated from God. And that was more than God would want for us in our relationship with him.
Yeah.
So you can see the empower and connect and correct all in that first couple of chapters.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And encouraging.
Well, and again, they had God and they still blew it. So parents, do your best and encourage each other. I do want to add a couple stories because you talk about how to disciple your kids as you go.
Yes.
One of them, and in the book, I use one of the voices as mentors. I want to share a story about Miss Harriet, if I may.
Please.
Miss Harriet is in her 70s. And, I probably shouldn't have said that on air. Miss Harriet, if you're listening to this, I apologize. But she's like an adoptive god grandmother to my youngest son, Jamie. And they have built a great rapport with each other. And here's the thing about intergenerational interaction that's so important. So I'm not a great dancer, but Miss Harriet will spend time with Jamie and she will teach him how to dance. But here's how it sets up. So he will go over and he has actually sanded and painted Miss Harriet's deck. I can't get him to clean his room sometimes. I don't want to do that kind of work, right?
Yeah.
And here's the cool thing about it. So he helps her, ministers to her. She teaches him how to bake brownies and dances. So when he comes back from Miss Harriet's after learning how to bake brownies, a voice, right? Teaching him something. What does he want to do? Dad, I want to make brownies. Can you pick me up stuff to make brownies? That's discipleship, right? That's non-formal discipleship because relationship. Well, so anyway, here's where it spans out. So Jamie goes to a school and the school was having a sock hop. They still do those, believe it or not.
Wow.
And so he asked Miss Harriet, because my mother is way down in Florida. She can't do these things. He goes, Miss Harriet, will you be my grandparent date at the sock hop? Well, of course, she says yes. She came to his adoption ceremony. She's been a great support for us. And so she says yes. But not only does she say yes, the school's about 45 minutes away. She goes and buys all the material and makes her own poodle skirt and blouse and neckerchief, got the shoes. She was decked out for 1950s sock hop.
Aww.
He was the belle of the ball, and she and Jamie got in the yearbook photographer because here's why. Part of discipleship is, again, time, transparency, trust. And Miss Harriet checked all those boxes, so to speak, and she cares so much for Jamie. She becomes another discipleship voice in his life. My kids, because we're close, there are just some things they're not going to tell me because they don't want to upset me or they don't want to disappoint me. And we have a rule in our house, which means you don't have to tell me or talk to me, but you do have to talk to someone that we know have the same values, and you can talk to them about whatever you want. And so Miss Harriet is one of those voices that speaks into the life of my youngest son.
So how is she related to you?
She's not. She was actually a congregation member in a church.
Yeah, that's cool.
And this is where church becomes family too, right?
That's right.
Yeah. First podcast. She becomes like a surrogate grandparent to my children, and especially Jamie. Every one of my kids has a mentor. That's part of discipleship. You put other wise voices in my kids' lives. I want to share one other story if I can, because you're talking about discipleship as we go, and again, making it easy.
Absolutely.
One of the things, I'm sorry?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We love stories.
So one of the things I started doing with Jamie, because we would get in the car, and again, his school is 45 minutes away. And so we would drive, and what great time in the car. And I see too many parents that, children's ministry or whatever, you guys have probably seen this, where they turn on the DVD player, right? I'm like, that's just such precious time. Turn the DVD player off in the car. But what we did is we would work our way through the Gospel of John, and we just read a little bit. So I'm driving to school with him to drop him off before I go to work. And we'll read through the Gospel of John, read a section or a chapter. And I'll say, my question always is simple discipleship. What does that mean to you? So we make our way through the Gospel of John, and then we go into the book of Psalms. And this is really fascinating. So we'd end with a prayer and stuff after the question. But what I would do, by the time we got to Psalm 18, you guys know how the Psalms are, right? I'm like, okay, so we got to about Psalm 18. I'm like, Jamie, what does that mean to you? He goes, okay, Dad, I get it. He says, like the author of the Psalm is always like, where are you, God? My life is miserable. I wish you'd just smash the teeth into my enemies, right? This, that, and the other. And it's always like, Lamentations and Ecclesiastes, right? And then he goes, but, and this is really important. He goes, but at the end, it's always like, but you, God, are my rock and my fortress, or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, again, I just asked the question. That's great. I'm glad you get that. What does it mean to you? Now, listen, this comes from a kid who's adopted older, who has experienced a lot of hurt in his life and trauma. And this is a spot, I'm going to try not to get emotional because every time I think about this, he goes, Dad, what that means to me is I know that God as my Father will never leave me or forsake me. That's discipleship.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So many opportunities that we have as parents to just model a life in relationship to Christ, the good things we do, the bad things we do, and then working through them. I keep going back to what you said last week when you talked about time and transparency. You know, as parents, we're going to get some things right. We're going to get a lot of things wrong. And just to be able to be transparent with our kids and say, look, I'm a disciple. I'm still learning how to faithfully follow Jesus. And sometimes I mess up, and I need you to know I messed up here and there's a better way to do this. And that transparency only comes when you spend time with your kids. So thank you for sharing that. That's I'm inspired by both of those stories.
Yes.
Thank you. I want to add one other thing, and I'm sorry, Lindsey, unless you have something to say.
No, go right ahead.
Oh, I think so. Let's talk about how we can connect easy ways to disciple our kids as we go, even for younger children, right? We got a TikTok generation, for lack of a better word. And I have a bunch of these suggestions in the back of the book. But one that I love is create a family video prayer journal. Like, think of it as a TikTok, go through the little lesson first, and then do a little reflection, a 30-second, 1-minute reflection. I'll tell you why this is important. Number one, it's a creative way that our kids can relate to, right? That you can record it. Number two, and this is going to sound, it's not meant to be morbid, but if you have this file of videos that you have talked about spiritual things with your kids, they will grow up with that and they can always go back to it. And when you pass on, it's a legacy. They will always have something to remember you by. And if you want to disciple out into the world, you know, be careful. But if you had a little TikTok page that shared your discipleship journey with your children in a safe way and protect your children and stuff, but man, that little video journal can be used in so many different ways.
I love that idea.
Yeah, especially since, as you said, this is a TikTok kind of generation, and to be able to say, let's do something of spiritual significance using something that you're very familiar with already. It turns it from the dangers that are there to something positive.
Yeah, and they teach us, right? My kids would need to do it. I can't.
Right, I wouldn't know where to start.
They do teach us, and I love those ideas. I love everything you've shared today, Rich. Thank you again for joining us here on Faith Together. It's been a joy to get to know you, and I have a feeling there's going to be more conversations to come.
Yes, so I'm looking forward to, we mentioned off air that you and I are both going to be at the D6 conference, and I look forward to getting to spend some time with you there and picking your brain and just sharing life together. For people, one of the things that our listeners need to know is there's something, and you probably have this experience already, but there's something very fascinating and just empowering about being around like-minded people who are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. And so, Rich, I really appreciate you joining us for these 2 episodes, just hearing from you. Thank you for the books that you have written and the way that they are helping to inspire families to be more intentional about the way they pass their faith on to their children.
Well, thank you. And I would encourage anybody, whether it's the conference or the books, they can go to d6family.com, D, the letter, 6, the number, d6family.com, and they can get books or conference material there.
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful. Well, next week, listeners, we hope you'll join us again here on Faith Together. We'll be looking through the book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, and we'll be welcoming one of Olivet's own professors, Daniel Allen, to share with us his thoughts on media and the influence of screens in this generation. And Leon, you had some time with The Anxious Generation through a book club last year.
I did. In fact, Daniel was in that book club, and as a result of that, he is teaching a class right now on media and society, and I'm attending the class.
You are learning.
Because I think he has a lot of wisdom to share, so I'm really excited about hearing from him next week.
So we'll be sharing that next week, but until then, we want to bless you with our special message we've been sharing at the end of each of our episodes this season. So Rich, will you close us out?
Absolutely. When building faith, we are better together.